Imagine the most important day of your life. The flowers are perfect, the guests are seated, the music is soft and sweet, the priest is smiling. Everything is exactly as you planned. Now imagine that the doors at the back of the church swing open, not with joy, not with latecomers, but with the loud, clicking heels of a woman in a red dress. Imagine that woman walks straight up to the altar, looks you in the eyes, and slaps you across the face so hard that your veil falls to the floor. The music stops. The guests gasp. The groom does nothing. Now imagine, what if the woman that was just slapped is the most dangerous person in that entire church? What if the one they thought was weak was actually the one who had been waiting? This is the story of Deborah. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you are watching without subscribing, it is like letting Deborah's strength be ignored the way they ignored her at that altar. When you click that button, you stand with every quiet, soft-hearted soul who was mocked, underestimated, and still chose to rise. Please subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you are watching from.
Deborah was not the kind of woman who made noise. She was the kind of woman people called graceful. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made it quieter, not louder. The kind of woman who smiled at you and made you feel like everything was going to be fine. On the morning of her wedding, Deborah sat in front of the mirror in the bridal suite of the Grand Regent Hotel in Lagos. The room smelled of white lilies and expensive perfume. Her bridesmaids were laughing and spraying hairspray. The makeup artist was singing quietly to herself. But Deborah was still. Not the stillness of nervousness, not the stillness of a woman who was afraid. It was a deeper stillness, the kind you earn after years of discipline, the kind that lives in the chest, not the face. She was wearing a white lace gown with a high collar and long sleeves that covered her wrists. It was modest and elegant, exactly the kind of dress you would expect from a woman like Deborah. What you would not expect, what no one in that room could have guessed, were her hands. Her hands were not soft like a bride's should be. They were calloused, steady, strong. The hands of a woman who had spent 15 years training in the art of Wing Chun Kungfu at a private temple in the hills of Ogun State. But nobody knew that. To the world, Deborah was a primary school teacher who liked gardening and made the best jollof rice in her street. She was quiet, well-mannered, and humble. That was all they saw. That was all she allowed them to see. Her chief bridesmaid, Bisi, came and knelt beside her. "Deborah, are you okay? You look too calm for someone getting married today." Deborah smiled softly. "I am calm because I am ready," she said. Bisi laughed. "Ready for marriage or ready for something else?" Deborah just smiled again. "Ready for whatever comes." She did not say more than that. She never did. Across the hotel, in the groom's suite, Samuel Alexander was also in front of a mirror. Sam was a handsome man. There was no denying that. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore his charcoal gray bespoke suit like it was his second skin. His cufflinks were gold. His shoes were Italian leather. His cologne was the kind that cost more per bottle than most people's monthly rent. He came from old money in Lagos, the kind of family where your name alone could open doors. His father had built an empire in real estate. His uncle sat on corporate boards. His mother wore the same strand of pearls to every event for 40 years and still looked like royalty. So Sam Alexander was not a man who was used to being told no. He was not a man who was used to consequences. He was a man who was used to things going exactly the way he wanted. And right now, what he wanted was to reply to one last message before he walked down that aisle. His best man, Chukuma, was trying to straighten Sam's pocket square when he saw it. The phone, the screen, the name on it. Chukuma cleared his throat. "Bros, today? You are doing this today?" Sam locked the screen quickly. "It's nothing. Business." Chukuma looked at him a long time. He did not say another word. He just stepped back and let Sam button his jacket. Sam checked himself in the mirror one more time. He looked good. He always looked good. But if you watched his eyes carefully, and Deborah had always been good at watching carefully, you would see that his eyes were not thinking about a bride. They were waiting for someone else. She arrived at 11:52, 8 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to begin.
Her name was Cynthia O'Coffer. Cynthia was not a woman who entered quietly. Everything about her was designed to be noticed. Her red silk dress was cut low at the front and tight everywhere else. It was the color of warning, the color of fire, the color that every bridal handbook in the world says do not wear this to a wedding. Cynthia did not read handbooks. Her weave was long, black, and bone straight, falling past her shoulders like a curtain of silk. Her nails were blood red, each one shaped like a blade. Her perfume was so strong it entered the church before she did. Her heels clicked on the marble floor of the cathedral. Click, click, click. Like a countdown.
She did not sit at the back. She did not find a quiet corner. She walked down the side aisle slowly, looking at every face that turned toward her. Some of the women pulled their husbands' arms. Some of the guests started to whisper. One elderly woman leaned to the person beside her and said very quietly, "This one did not come in peace." She was not wrong. Cynthia took a seat near the front, 3 rows behind where Sam's mother was sitting. She crossed her legs and opened her clutch bag as if she was at a cocktail party. She checked her lipstick in a small mirror. She smiled to herself. She had been waiting for this moment for 8 months. 8 months since Sam had told her she means nothing. 8 months since he had given her a key to his apartment. 8 months since she had started believing that she was the one he was really coming home to. And now Deborah, quiet, boring, soft Deborah, was about to become Mrs. Alexander. And Cynthia was supposed to just sit at home and accept that? No. She had not dressed like this to sit at home. The music began. The bridesmaids walked in. The flower girls scattered white petals across the aisle. Then Deborah appeared at the entrance of the cathedral, and the whole room held its breath. She was luminous. There is no other word for it. The white lace gown, the simple bouquet of lilies, the serene expression on her face. She looked like a woman walking into the life she had earned. Calm, beautiful, ready. She walked slowly. She did not rush. Her eyes were fixed on the altar. The priest was smiling, the guests were smiling, even the children were quiet for once. Sam watched her walk toward him, and for a moment, just one moment, something crossed his face that looked like shame. But it passed quickly. The ceremony began. The vows were being read. Then the priest asked the question that every wedding has to ask. If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now, or forever hold your peace. The church was silent. Then Cynthia stood up. She did not stand quickly. She stood slowly, smoothing her red dress, making sure every eye in the room found her before she spoke. "I have a reason," she said. Her voice was loud and clear, practiced. She had rehearsed this. The gasps came like a wave across the pews. Sam's face went tight, but he did not speak. Cynthia walked to the end of the pew and stepped into the aisle. She looked at Deborah with an expression that had no kindness in it at all. "This man has been with me for 8 months, she said. "He bought me a car. He gave me a key to his penthouse apartment. He told me to my face that you were just someone his family chose, that this wedding was just for show." Murmuring spread through the guests like a fire in dry grass. Deborah stood very still at the altar. Her bouquet did not shake. Her expression did not break. Cynthia was not finished. "And furthermore," she continued, stepping closer, "I am 3 months pregnant with his child." The church exploded. Sam's mother made a sound like a wounded animal. 2 of the bridesmaids grabbed each other. The priest took a small instinctive step back. But Deborah still did not move. Cynthia saw this stillness and read it as weakness. She had expected crying. She had expected shouting. She had expected Deborah to crumble publicly, the way soft women always did.
She walked right up to the altar. She stopped in front of Deborah. She looked at her from head to toe with the kind of contempt that only a truly arrogant person can manufacture. "You are boring," Cynthia said quietly, so only Deborah could hear. "You were always going to lose him to someone like me, someone with fire, someone who is actually alive." She raised her hand. The slap landed across Deborah's left cheek. The sound of it echoed off the vaulted ceiling of the cathedral. Deborah's veil fell to the floor. The entire church went silent. If this story has your heart racing right now, drop a comment saying, "I'm still watching." Let's see who is really here until the end. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is exactly the moment to do it, because what happens next is the part they never see coming. Before we go any further, we need to understand something. In the ancient Chinese martial art of wushu, the parent of kung fu, there is a principle called ru gang. It translates as softness overcomes hardness. A student does not learn this principle in the first year or the second. It takes years of training, years of being beaten by harder, faster opponents before the body understands what the mind has been told. The principle is this: when force meets force, the harder one breaks first. But when softness meets force, the force has nothing to push against. It loses its energy, it spends itself. And then, in that moment of emptiness, the soft one strikes. This is what Deborah had been practicing for 15 years. Not how to attack, but how to wait. So when Cynthia's hand connected with Deborah's cheek, when the sound rang out across that cathedral and the veil fell, what no one in that church understood was that the moment they thought was Deborah's lowest was actually Deborah's invitation. She had been waiting for it, not just today, for months. Deborah bent slowly and picked up her veil. She placed it on the altar rail beside her bouquet. She smoothed her dress. She straightened her back. Then she turned to face Cynthia, and something changed in her face. It was not anger. Anger is hot and disorganized. This was something else entirely. It was the focused, absolute calm of a person who has arrived at a decision. The guests closest to the front would later say they had never seen an expression like it in their lives. Cynthia raised her hand to strike again. What happened next lasted less than 3 seconds. Deborah's right forearm rose in a fluid, almost lazy motion and redirected Cynthia's arm to the side. Not with force, but with precision. The technique is called Pak Sao in Wing Chun. It does not block the attack, it redirects it. It uses the attacker's own energy against them. Cynthia's momentum carried her forward and sideways. She stumbled hard into the flower arrangement at the edge of the altar, roses and lilies scattered across the marble floor. The vase tipped and shattered. The church erupted. 2 of Sam's security men started down the aisle. And that is when Deborah did the thing that nobody who was in that cathedral would ever forget. She turned to face the security men, lowered her center of gravity, and stood. Feet shoulder-width apart, hands raised and open, elbows dropped, weight balanced. A combat stance. Clean, perfect, unmistakable. The security men stopped walking. Sam's best man, Chikuma, took 3 steps backward. Sam Alexander stood at the altar with his mouth open, looking at a woman he had spent 8 months underestimating, and felt, for possibly the first time in his adult life, genuinely afraid. The quiet bride was gone. What was standing at the altar of the cathedral in a white lace gown with calloused hands and absolute stillness was a master. Cynthia picked herself up off the floor, her red dress torn at the shoulder, mascara running. She looked at Deborah and felt something she had not felt in years. She felt small. Deborah reached beneath the altar's flower arrangement, the one that had been placed there by her own bridesmaids the night before, as she had instructed, and produced a slim manila envelope. She held it up so the church could see it. "Before I walk out of this building," she said, and her voice was quiet and even, like someone reading from a prepared statement, I want everyone in this room to understand what they have witnessed today." She opened the envelope. Inside were printed photographs, bank transfer records, WhatsApp screenshots, a forensic accountant's report. Samuel Alexander has been moving money from 3 registered charities through a shell company registered in Cotonou. The total so far is 240 million naira. I have spent the last 4 months documenting it. Sam's face went from white to gray. Cynthia, Deborah continued, turning to look at her calmly, was not acting alone today. She was paid to cause a scene by Mr. Bankole Adejobi, Sam's business partner and rival, who wanted Sam's reputation destroyed before their court case next month. She placed the documents on the altar. "Sam, you thought you were using her. Bankole thought he was using her. And Cynthia," she looked at her with something that was almost pity, "thought she was using everyone." She shook her head slowly. Nobody was winning in this story, except the truth. Deborah took off her engagement ring. It was a large solitaire diamond, the kind of ring that cost more than most people's cars. Sam placed it on her finger 6 months ago in a restaurant with photographers present, because with Sam Alexander, everything was a performance. She held it up once, let the light catch it. Then she walked slowly to where Cynthia was standing, still dazed, still holding her torn dress at the shoulder, still trying to understand what kind of woman she had put her hands on today. Deborah took Cynthia's right hand. She placed the ring on her finger. "You wanted his life," she said softly for the whole church to hear. "Now you can have it. The penthouse, the car, the title of Mrs. Alexander." She paused. "And his debts." She let go of Cynthia's hand. She picked up her bouquet of white lilies from the altar rail. She looked at Sam one last time. Just looked at him. No anger, no tears. Just a long, steady, honest look from a woman who had finally finished waiting. Then she turned and walked down the aisle. Her heels did not click like Cynthia's had. They were quiet, controlled. Every single guest stood as she passed. Not because anyone told them to. They just stood. The doors of the cathedral opened, and Deborah stepped outside into the hot Lagos afternoon. The sun hit her face, and she stopped for a moment. Just stood there, eyes closed, breathing. Her chief bridesmaid, Bisi, came rushing out behind her, clutching her own dress, nearly tripping on the steps. "Deborah! Deborah, wait! Where are you going? When did you?" Bisi stopped talking because she was laughing and crying at the same time and could not decide which to do first. Deborah opened her eyes. She smiled at her. "I told you I was ready for whatever comes," she said. Bisi stared at her. "But the Kungfu, the documents, the ring! Deborah, who are you?" Deborah looked up at the sky. A small bird was flying across it, free and quick and going somewhere only it knew. "I am exactly who I always was," she said. "I just stopped hiding it." She handed Bisi the bouquet. Then she walked down the cathedral steps in her white lace gown, got into the car that was already waiting, the car she had prearranged because Deborah never left anything to chance, and drove away. She did not look back. She was going home. Not to Sam's penthouse, not to the apartment they had been decorating together. She was going to her dojo, the small private training room in her house where wooden training dummies stood in a row and the floor was worn smooth from 15 years of practice. There was a class there on Saturday mornings. Young women, most of them. Some were recovering from things they did not like to talk about. Some had just arrived and did not yet know why they were there. Deborah was always patient with them. She understood what it meant to carry a strength you had not yet learned to show. There's an old Wushu proverb that says, "The tree that bends in the storm does not break. The tree that refuses to bend is the one you find lying across the road the next morning." Deborah was never weak. She was never the porcelain doll they thought she was. She was the bend in the tree, the pause before the thunder, the stillness in the eye of something that, if they had only bothered to look closely, they might have recognized as a storm.
Sam Alexander would face a financial investigation that would last 2 years. Cynthia would discover that the pregnancy had been a lie. She told herself as much as anyone else. Bankole Adejobi would find out that Deborah had already submitted her documentation to the EFCC before the wedding day even began. And Deborah would teach her Saturday class the following morning in a loose training uniform, in bare feet, in her own dojo, in her own life. Finally free. What would you have done in Deborah's place? Would you have used every skill you had or walked away in silence? Have you ever stayed quiet in a situation not because you were afraid, but because you were waiting? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story moved something in you, if it reminded you of your own strength or someone you know who carries more than they show, please share it. Someone out there needs to see Deborah walk out of that cathedral today. Subscribe for more stories that will stay with you long after the video ends, because the next one, I promise you, is even more unbelievable than this.